The verdict reads as follows as to each count. On count one, it says, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. On counts 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the verdict reads, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Of felony murder, 2 counts, aggravated battery, 2 counts, and cruelty to child in the first degree. Y'all can have a seat. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a tough week for you, I'm sure, and I know that you probably had a lot of places you would have rather been this week than here. I do want to thank you tremendously for your service. You have shown up, you've been on time, and you've paid thorough attention. You've taken in a lot of information this week, and you're obviously, from the fact that you've deliberated over this, you've looked at this very closely. So with that, your county appreciates the work you've done, and you'll receive a stipend. It's just a token of the county's appreciation. You are free to leave for the term. You're also free to, you can certainly step back into the courtroom through the other door if you wish to, or hang around if you want to speak with the lawyers, but you don't have to. You don't have to talk to anybody. You're welcome to leave at this time if you prefer. If you do, turn in your badges on your way out, and make sure that your notes are in the jury room. And I really appreciate it. Y'all are free to go. Oh, was there anything hold the jury for just a second. Ask them to step into the jury room. No, ask them to step into the jury room.
She sits stone-faced in court, beauty queen, posture perfect, as if she's still on a stage being judged. Trinity Pogue has convinced herself the jury will see what she wants them to see: a wrongly accused honor student, a victim of rushed judgment, a young woman whose pageant smile and straight-A transcript will create reasonable doubt. Her lawyers have painted 5 different versions of what happened to 18-month-old Romeo Angelus. A fall, a shower accident. Maybe the father did it while drunk. The defense is working. The jury is listening. But then prosecutors pull up her phone. What Trinity Googled while that toddler fought for his life in a hospital bed. The text messages about wanting to punch him. The 5 contradictory stories. And in that moment, everything changes. What you're about to hear is the story of how a Miss Donaldsonville pageant winner transformed a college dorm room into a crime scene, and how her own smartphone became the prosecution's most devastating witness. Every detail has been verified through court testimony, medical examiner reports, and trial evidence. If you've never heard this case before, prepare yourself, because what happened at Georgia Southwestern State University will challenge everything you think you know about jealousy, about the difference between feeling rage and acting on it, and about how the gap between those two things can be measured in exactly 35 minutes. We've all felt that surge of irrational anger at something innocent. A child crying on a plane. A partner's ex who keeps appearing in conversation. That hot flash of resentment that makes you understand, just for a second, why people lose control. For most of us, that moment passes. We feel it, we acknowledge how ugly it is, and we let it go. But what happens when you don't let it go? When you feed it instead of starving it. When jealousy stops being a feeling and becomes a lens through which you see everything. This case lives in that space between normal human emotion and unforgivable action. And the distance between those 2 points? It's smaller than you think. On January 13th, 2024, security cameras at Georgia Southwestern State University captured Julian Williams leaving his girlfriend's dorm building, trash bag in hand, heading to Walmart for pizza and drinks. He left his 18-month-old son with Trinity Pogue. Just 35 minutes. What happened in that dorm room would destroy 2 families, and a life that had barely begun, and force everyone watching to answer a question they'd rather avoid. At what point does resentment become murder? If you want to understand how ordinary emotions lead to extraordinary tragedy, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, because this story will stay with you long after the verdict. Here's what makes this case so disturbing. Trinity Pogue wasn't a monster. She was an 18-year-old college freshman with a pageant crown and a nursing degree in her future. Member of the President Jimmy Carter Leadership Program. Straight A's her first semester. She posted on Instagram about how Jesus blessed her in every single way after competing at the National Peanut Festival. Small-town Georgia success story. The kind of young woman parents hold up as an example. And she had a boyfriend she adored, Julian Williams, 22 years old, who came with something Trinity wanted desperately to give him herself. A child. Not just any child. Her child. The baby she imagined would cement their relationship, would make them a real family, would prove she was the center of his world. But Julian already had a son. Romeo Angelus, 18 months old, called JD by most people who knew him. And that's where the fairy tale Trinity was writing for herself hit a wall. Because JD wasn't part of her script. The text messages Trinity sent to her roommate, Paris Permort, revealed what was happening beneath those pageant smiles. Messages that would later be read aloud in court, dissected by prosecutors, held up as evidence of a mind unraveling. One message in particular. Why do I feel anger toward JD? Like earlier when we were in bed and JD kept touching Jay's face, I almost cried. Like, I don't know, not jealousy, but like I want to love him, but instead of loving, I just feel like angry, like want to punch him. El Mayo, OMG, that sounds so bad. She typed those words, sent them, added a laugh to make it seem less serious. But that impulse, that violent fantasy about an 18-month-old child, that wasn't a joke. That was a confession she didn't recognize she was making. Former roommate Megan Pitts noticed something else. JD cried constantly when he was with Trinity, every single time. Not sometimes. Not when he was tired or hungry. Every time. But when someone else was there, when the roommate could help tend him, the baby was calmer. He responded better to other people, as if he could sense something about Trinity that made him afraid. The night before JD died, Megan was woken up by crying. Not normal fussing. Loud enough to wake her across the hall. Continuous crying that eventually stopped. She didn't think much of it then. But that moment, that middle-of-the-night disturbance, would later take on significance no one wanted to acknowledge. And there was one more text that prosecutors believe revealed everything about Trinity's state of mind. A message she sent about that weekend, about the hours when JD was with her. She wrote, I got stuck with JD. Not, I'm watching the baby. Not, I'm helping Julian out. Stuck, like he was a burden, like he was an obstacle, like his existence was something happening to her instead of a child who needed care and protection. Wait, I need to back up for a second because this detail becomes critical later. Trinity Pogue wasn't just some inexperienced teenager who didn't know how to handle children. She had extensive babysitting experience. Former employers would testify at trial that they trusted her with their kids, that she'd never shown any signs of violence or inability to care for children safely. She knew what she was doing. She understood child development, recognized injuries, knew when to call for help, which makes what happened next even more damning. January 13th, 2024, a Sunday morning at Georgia Southwestern State University. Julian Williams came to Trinity's dorm room with JD. Video surveillance captured everything. The comings and goings, the exact timestamps, evidence that would become the foundation of the prosecution's case. Trinity's roommate stopped by during a work break. She saw JD. He looked perfectly normal, alert, no visible injuries. This is important. Remember this, because it eliminates every theory the defense would later try to construct about when those injuries occurred. Then Julian left for Walmart. 11:55 a.m. security footage showed him walking out of the building, trash bags in hand, heading to get pizza and drinks for lunch. He left his son alone with his girlfriend. 35 minutes. That's all. At 12:30 p.m., Trinity called him. Twice. Texted urgently. The baby wasn't breathing. When Julian rushed back to the dorm, he found JD unresponsive. He grabbed his son, ran to his car, drove straight to Phoebe Sumner Hospital's emergency room. The child was barely conscious, his condition deteriorating during the frantic drive. Dr. Michael Buzzman was working the ER that Sunday. According to his testimony, JD arrived not breathing, no pulse, completely unresponsive. Medical staff performed CPR. They performed a tracheostomy. They managed to detect a heartbeat, got the child technically stable enough to prep for an emergency flight to a children's hospital in Atlanta. And then they noticed the injuries. A large swelling on the left side of his face, something that looked like fingerprints, multiple bruises on the forehead. On the right side of the skull, a large swelling on the posterior skull. The kind of injuries that told a story Trinity hadn't yet started explaining. Dr. Buzzman performed imaging. What he found was catastrophic. Medical imaging revealed critical injuries. The evidence indicated direct blows to the head. According to prosecutors, the pattern and severity indicated significant force had been applied. Not a simple fall from a bed, not an accident during a shower. The kind of force that requires intent. The kind of trauma that Dr. Buzzman testified couldn't happen from the scenarios the defense would later suggest. 3 hours after arriving at the hospital, Romeo Angelus was pronounced dead. Here's where the story stops making sense. Or rather, here's where Trinity's explanation stops making sense, because the evidence tells a very clear story. Investigators immediately began interviewing Trinity at the hospital, and that's when her version of events started changing. First explanation: JD had been eating chips shortly before he lost consciousness. Hospital records were checked. The child's mouth was examined. No evidence. Nothing in JD's stomach. The toddler hadn't eaten anything. When confronted with this contradiction, Trinity's story changed immediately. Second explanation: he hadn't been eating at all. He had simply fallen off the bed. But Dr. Buzzman had already testified those injuries couldn't come from falling off a bed. Not with that pattern. Not with that severity. Third explanation: this one came directly for what Trinity told Dr. Buzzman at the hospital, and it's the one that would haunt her throughout the trial. She admitted she had shaken JD because he wasn't acting correctly. 3 different stories. Chips, bed fall, shaking. All within hours of the child's death. All contradicting each other. All contradicting the medical evidence. But wait, because this is where it gets even worse. Dr. Buzzman testified about timing. While Julian told medical staff JD had fallen just 5 minutes before arriving at the hospital, the injuries indicated the trauma had occurred 30 to 60 minutes earlier, exactly during the window when Trinity was alone with the child. The 35 minutes when no one else was there, when no cameras could see what happened, when it was just Trinity and JD, and whatever rage she'd been texting about finally found its release. The prosecution was building something prosecutors call consciousness of guilt. Evidence that shows someone knows they did something wrong. Evidence that comes not from what happened in that dorm room, but from what Trinity did afterward. Special Agent Samantha Fort with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation extracted data from Trinity's phone. What she found would prove devastating to any claim of innocence. Remember when Trinity was at the hospital, when JD was dying, when she should have been praying or hoping or doing anything except what she was actually doing? She was searching Google. The search history told investigators everything they needed to know about Trinity's state of mind. At 2:30 p.m. on January 14th, while sitting at the hospital and police department, Trinity typed these exact phrases into her phone. How do you get a brain bleed? And can a depressed skull fracture go unnoticed? She also searched for how to deactivate Facebook, how to make things disappear, and then more searches. What causes infant brain damage? Subconjunctival hemorrhages. Think about that for a moment. An 18-month-old child is dying in a hospital from critical injuries. His father is devastated. Medical staff are trying everything. And Trinity Pogue is sitting in a waiting room, not searching for prayers, not searching for medical miracles, searching for explanations, for ways these specific injuries occur, for information about how they might go unnoticed or dismissed. Prosecutors argued this showed consciousness of guilt. Trinity knew what injuries JD had sustained because she'd inflicted them. She was looking for ways to explain them away. But here's what destroyed the defense even further. Prosecutors had videos from Trinity's own phone. Videos taken the day before JD's death, on January 12th. The footage showed JD appearing happy, alert, completely uninjured. No bruises, no marks, nothing that suggested anything was wrong. And remember Trinity's roommate who saw JD on January 13th with no visible injuries? That testimony became critical. It eliminated any theory that the trauma occurred the night before or during a shower earlier that morning. Dr. Buzzman had testified about something crucial regarding head trauma. With injuries of that magnitude, major symptoms would appear within minutes. Not hours later. Not the next day. Minutes. The timeline was airtight. JD was fine when Julian left at 11:55 a.m. He was catastrophically injured when Julian returned 35 minutes later. Only Trinity Pogue was with him during that window. No one else. No other explanation. Just Trinity and JD and 35 minutes that ended a life. Both these things can't be true. Yet, both were testified under oath. Trinity's defense team would argue she was a victim, that investigators rushed to judgment, that multiple explanations existed for how JD could have been injured. The father could have done it. The injuries could have happened in the shower, could have happened the night before, could have been a fall from the bed. 5 different theories. Each one contradicted by medical evidence, by the timeline, by the video showing an uninjured child hours before his death. Defense attorney W.T. Tim Gamble III painted Trinity as a second victim, an innocent 18-year-old honor student accused of a crime she didn't commit. He argued Julian Williams had been drinking the night before J.D. died. Maybe the injuries happened then. Maybe when J.D. fell from a 40-inch bed. Maybe during the shower, when Julian was holding the crying child. The defense requested mistrial, claiming the father's criminal history hadn't been turned over. Judge W. James Sizemore Jr. denied the request, noting law enforcement had acted in good faith throughout the investigation. Gamble called character witnesses, former employers who had trusted Trinity to babysit their children. They testified she'd never had issues, never shown any signs of violence. She had extensive experience. This wasn't someone who would hurt a child. But then the prosecution cross-examined those witnesses. Prosecutor Lewis Lamb asked pointed questions. You'd expect her to recognize injury to a child, wouldn't you? That's part of what you expect out of a babysitter, right? If something goes wrong, they're going to recognize it, do something about it. If there was a child being physically abused or grossly neglected, and it was occurring in her presence, that would be a gross failure on her part if she just did nothing, wouldn't it? The implication landed hard. If Trinity had the experience and knowledge to care for children safely, she would have recognized the severity of JD's condition immediately. She would have called for help right away instead of waiting until symptoms became life-threatening. Instead of changing her story 3 times, instead of Googling how skull fractures might go unnoticed, Julian Williams took the stand. This is always the hardest part of these cases, when a surviving parent has to relive the worst day of their life in front of strangers. Julian described that morning, JD sleeping between him and Trinity, the baby reaching for them, making little noises, everything normal, ordering pizza, leaving for Walmart. Then he testified about previous incidents, one in particular from November. Trinity had texted him and his sister, saying she was cleaning up, and JD ran up behind her, and she accidentally hit him with a drawer. Accidentally. That word doing a lot of work. Julian also described the moment he got Trinity's call. She had JD in her hands. The baby was limp, not functional, Julian said. That word, functional, the way a parent describes their child when they're trying not to say dead. He testified about the frantic drive, about JD throwing up on his shirt. And then he said something that revealed the depth of his grief. Something so specific and devastating that it's hard to read without feeling it. The shirt JD threw up on, the jacket covered in vomit from that desperate drive to hospital, Julian still has them, at the end of his bed, never been washed. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation didn't take them into evidence, so Julian keeps them, the last physical connection to his son. The prosecution had built an overwhelming case. Medical experts stating the injuries occurred during the 35-minute window. Videos proving JD was uninjured before Julian left. Changing stories showing deception. Google searches revealing consciousness of guilt. Text messages showing documented hatred toward a toddler. But here's what the jury had to decide. Intent. Did Trinity Pogue intend to kill Romeo Angelus? Or did she lose control in a moment of rage and cause injuries that proved fatal? That distinction matters legally. It's the difference between malice murder and felony murder, between premeditation and a violent loss of control. Prosecutor Louis Lamb stood before the jury for closing arguments. 5 days of testimony, hours of evidence. Now came the moment to connect every piece into a narrative the jury couldn't ignore. Lamb reminded them of that text message. "I got stuck with JD." That phrase summed up Trinity's feelings. She didn't want to embrace a stepmother role. She wanted to start a family with Julian Williams, but not with that child. The source of friction in the relationship was that Trinity resented JD. She was jealous of the attention Williams gave his son, jealous of the time, the emotional energy, the focus. An 18-year-old college student who wanted to be the center of her boyfriend's world, and an 18-month-old child stood in the way. Lamb addressed each defense theory directly. Could Julian have been responsible? He was thoroughly investigated. For hours at the police station. Cleared completely. Could the injuries have happened in the shower, during the fall from the bed, the night before? Lamb pointed to the medical evidence. The roommate seeing JD uninjured hours before. The videos showing a healthy child the day before. The testimony about how quickly symptoms of major head trauma appear. Then Lamb presented the prosecution's theory. During those 35 minutes, prosecutors believe Trinity snapped. JD started crying after his father left. The resentment that had been building for weeks, the jealousy she'd been texting about, the violent fantasies she dismissed with LML, it all came to a head. She lost control. Defense attorney Gamble countered. Too many possibilities. Too much reasonable doubt. But Lamb had a response. He asked the jury about the bedfall theory. One fall couldn't explain the extent and pattern of injuries documented by medical examiners. Multiple bruises, swelling in different locations. The kind of trauma that speaks to repeated force. And then Lamb brought back those Google searches. Trinity knew exactly what injuries JD had sustained. She was looking for ways to explain them away while that child lay dying. The jury had everything they needed. They deliberated for nearly 3 hours, weighing evidence, debating reasonable doubt, considering 6 charges. Judge Sizemore took the bench. Word came. A verdict had been reached. Trinity Pogue stood. The courtroom went silent. On count 1, malice murder, the verdict, not guilty. Trinity visibly broke down crying. The relief on her face was obvious. She'd been acquitted of the most serious charge, the one requiring proof of intent to kill. For a moment, it seemed like reasonable doubt had prevailed. But then the rest of the verdicts came. Counts 2 through 6. Felony murder, 2 counts. Aggravated battery, 2 counts. Cruelty to a child in the first degree, 5 guilty verdicts. Under Georgia law, the judge had to determine which charges merged and which sentences would be imposed. Some counts overlapped because they stemmed from the same conduct. Less than 1 hour after the verdict, the court reconvened for sentencing. Judge Sizemore addressed Trinity directly. He acknowledged the tragedy on both sides. A life lost, a young woman's future destroyed. He spoke about the conduct, about how everything led to the offense of felony murder. Then he delivered the sentence. Life in prison on the felony murder conviction. 20 years concurrent on the child cruelty charge. Eligible for parole after 30 years. Trinity Pogue, 18 years old, will be 48 when she could first apply for parole. The judge said something then that struck a strange note of humanity in a moment defined by its absence. He told Trinity he hoped she could have some sort of life after serving the sentence, that she'd have to make the best of life while in prison, as if that was possible, as if someone who took a life at 18 could somehow rebuild one at 48. Trinity Pogue was stripped of her Miss Donaldsonville title immediately after her arrest. The pageant organization acted swiftly. No more crown, no more sash, no more Instagram posts about Jesus blessing her in every single way. She went from college freshman with straight A's to convicted murderer in less than a year. She's serving her life sentence in Georgia now. Her attorneys have indicated they will pursue appeals to the Georgia Supreme Court. The case against her rested on layers of evidence, each one eliminating another possible explanation until only one truth remained. The medical evidence proving JD's injuries occurred during those 35 minutes. The text messages showing documented resentment. The Google searches revealing consciousness of guilt. The 5 different explanations that contradicted each other. The videos and witness testimony creating an airtight timeline. Whether Trinity lost control in a moment of rage, or whether there was more calculation involved remains a question the evidence couldn't definitively answer. But the jury decided it didn't matter. The result was the same. An 18-month-old child died because the person responsible for protecting him couldn't separate her jealousy from her actions. Romeo Angelus would turn 3 years old this year. Instead, his father keeps an unwashed jacket at the end of his bed as the last physical connection to his son. Trinity sits in prison, eligible for parole in 2054. The appeals continue. Security footage still exists from January 13, 2024, showing Julian Williams leaving the dorm and rushing back 35 minutes later, with his son already fatally injured. Here's what I can't stop thinking about. This case didn't require a monster. Trinity Pogue felt normal jealousy, the kind we've all experienced. That flash of resentment when someone else gets attention we think we deserve. That anger at being stuck with responsibility we didn't choose. She felt what a lot of 18-year-olds feel when their partner has a child from a previous relationship. The difference between Trinity and most people isn't that she felt those things. It's that she acted on them. She fed the jealousy instead of starving it. She let resentment become her lens instead of recognizing it as a distortion. And somewhere in those 35 minutes, she crossed a line most of us instinctively know exists. But here's what haunts me. At what point did this become inevitable? Was it when she first texted about wanting to punch JD? Was it when she wrote, "I got stuck with JD," as if his existence was an inconvenience? Was it that November incident with the drawer? Or was there a single second, one specific moment during those 35 minutes when Julian was at Walmart, when JD started crying, when Trinity made a choice that could have gone differently? We'll never know. The only person who knows is sitting in a Georgia prison cell. And even she might not be able to identify that exact moment when feeling became action, when thought became violence, when a pageant queen with a bright future became a woman who killed a child. So I'm asking you honestly, where's your line? When does heartbreak become obsession? When does jealousy become justification? When does pain become permission to harm? Most of us never test that boundary. We feel the anger, acknowledge how ugly it is, and turn away from it. But Trinity didn't turn away. She leaned in, and the result is a dead child and 2 destroyed families. Leave your honest answer below. Not what you think you should say, but what you actually think. Because somewhere tonight, someone is feeding jealousy they should starve. Someone is nurturing resentment instead of releasing it. Someone is standing at that edge Trinity crossed. And the choice they make matters more than they know. This case stays with me because of the waste of it. 2 lives destroyed over jealousy that should have faded. Over attention-seeking that should have been addressed with honest conversation instead of violence. If this story moved you, if it made you think about your own edges and boundaries, hit that like button. Subscribe for cases that ask hard questions about human nature, about the choices that separate tragedy from normalcy, about the responsibility we have to recognize our own capacity for harm and turn away from it. Because the difference between Trinity Pogue and you isn't that you're a better person. It's that you've chosen, again and again, not to cross that line. And that choice deserves to be acknowledged for what it is. Everything.